And welcome to The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers. We're here every week to discuss new adventures and lively topics and meet some interesting people, and we've got all of that today.
We do indeed. We're going to be talking about domestic violence, and we've titled the show Domestic Violence, There's Too Much of It. And indeed, we believe that the information we'll be giving to you this Sunday is that there is too much of it. By the way, happy 300th show.
Thank you. You don't look a day over $2.99 yourself.
I wanted to go back and look at a little footage from our pilot about 5 years ago, and I was afraid to do it.
300 shows. That's approaching bonanza, I think.
What person has been the only double-digit visitor?
Well, I know the answer to that question.
And that is?
It's Governor Brad Henry.
Governor Brad Henry's been on 11 times. We have had 243 different individuals on. That's not counting return visits or anything.
Don't ask me to name all of those.
No, or me either. But we're going to have Marsha Smith today, and it's a very important topic that I think our visitors will like.
All right, we'll be back with more on The Verdict right after this.
Chesapeake Energy, every day is game day. A chance to outperform the field and win again. Winning consistently demands the kind of leadership we see in the Hornets' Chris Paul, a champion whose respect for the game and his team has produced one of pro basketball's brightest new stars. At Chesapeake, we know leadership starts with a generous heart as well as the will to win. It's taking responsibility for more than personal success. It's building teams that perform as one. In natural gas exploration, winning demands leaders who develop strong teams in the company and in the community. And always, the purpose of victory is prosperity for our fellow citizens and our communities. We've learned each win is earned as a team, and Chris Paul proves it every time he plays. Chesapeake, American Energy wins the day.
Looks like somebody doesn't want you to know the facts about Cox Digital Telephone. Maybe it's because over 1.5 million customers are saving big, and you can too. Plus, you'll save even more on all your Cox services when you bundle today.
Oh, here's that new phone service I've been hearing about.
So while the phone company may not like competition,
nice doggy.
You're gonna love it.
Nice doggy.
Not sure where you're headed? NATS can help you find your way. It's the National Athletic Testing System. We call it NATS. You'll call it your launching pad to success. NATS will give you a standardized evaluation that will help you measure your performance and give that information to college coaches so they can accurately evaluate your potential. NATS also helps with academic support. Join with the Oklahoma High School Football Coaches Association and head for success at www.nats.us.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Very pleased today to have Marsha Smith, the Executive Director of the Oklahoma Coalition Against Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault, with us today. She has been an advocate for women and children's rights and protection for about 13 years. She's a graduate of East Oklahoma State University. She is a native of Tom, Oklahoma. And Mick knew somebody from Tom.
Yeah, Myron Patton, my old television buddy, is from Tom. It's a star-studded place.
That's exactly right.
She is a past recipient of the Oklahoma Bar Association's Liberty Bell Award, about which I know a little. And that is that it is given to the layperson who has done the most in the state that year to promote justice. And so that's quite a prestigious award. This is your first visit, Marsha, but I hope not your last. Welcome back. Or welcome, I should say.
It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me today.
Marsha, what is the Oklahoma Coalition Against Domestic Violence?
It's the Coalition Against Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault. We address violence against women issues generally. It is the organization of domestic violence and sexual assault service providers in the state of Oklahoma.
So if someone is a victim or knows someone is a victim, is it a reporting agency? How would you describe it
We
to the viewer?
we are a systems advocacy, information, education organization. We support those programs that provide services to victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. There are about 30 of those in the state that are certified by the Attorney General to provide services. There is a network also of tribal domestic violence programs in the state of Oklahoma. 3 of those are also members of the coalition. We provide training, technical assistance, education activities.
Your mission, I would assume then, is to raise awareness and hopefully diminish the amount of incidents. Am I on the right track?
You're absolutely right. We promote always safety for victims and accountability for perpetrators. That's always our first mission in the work that we do. And we believe that we best accomplish that by raising awareness, by reaching out to professionals who might be in a position to provide services to victims, reaching out to victims and increasing awareness for victims so that they know that there's a network of organizations, that there is help for them out there. Also, we really strive to educate the general public so that when a victim presents themselves, that person knows better how to recognize domestic violence, to respond to domestic violence, and then make a good referral for that person.
Let me ask you a couple of questions. They're not related at all, but they just occurred to me. I know on this show, and probably during this taping, there will be a public service announcement talking about domestic violence. I presume that Cox is a good sponsor to allow that to happen, and you have that message on the air on other stations.
Yes, we do.
Did you put that together?
I did not. The Office of the Attorney General did that. The Attorney General's office is the certifying and funding agency for domestic violence and sexual assault services in the state of Oklahoma. The legislature granted that authority to the Attorney General's office about 1.5 years ago.
Well, how many organizations are a member of the coalition?
There are 27 state certified programs and 3 tribal programs.
By programs, tell our viewers what's involved in a program.
A program is a victim service organization. By law, it must be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for victims. Some have shelter programs, some do not. Some are what we call crisis centers. They must have a 24-hour crisis line so that the individual can call locally to receive services, to talk to an advocate, to talk to a counselor. They have to have transportation, emergency transportation. There's quite a long list of requirements, but primarily the safe shelter. Even the crisis centers are in a position to get victims to emergency safe shelter.
There's a requirement in Oklahoma that if someone knows of child abuse going on, that must be reported to Department of Human Services. Is there a similar requirement for domestic violence knowledge?
Not until it reaches a level of severity, criminally injurious behavior. Anything less than that, then there is not a requirement for reporting.
What are the demographic breakdowns? Is this, I know it's across the state and it goes across all age groups and racial barriers, but are there any trends? Is it a rural issue? Is it an urban issue? Is it for people that have been married a long time or people that have not been together a long time? What can you tell us about what to expect?
We used to say that any woman, anywhere, anytime, could be a victim of domestic violence, but we've been doing the work long enough now to have some studies that show us that men can be victims. It's not reported nearly as often for men, but men can indeed be victims of domestic violence. And any person has the potential to be a victim of domestic violence. But for some, the barriers are more complicated. Victims with disabilities, women with disabilities are at a huge disadvantage when we're looking at the issue of violence against women. Poverty is something that really intensifies the violence in the relationships and also raises a different kind of barrier that makes it harder for an individual to leave. It's not a good situation for any victim, and it can be deadly for any victim.
Are drugs or alcohol often involved or seldom involved?
often involved. We can't find any evidence that tells us that mental health issues or substance abuse issues are actually causes of domestic violence, but we do know that we very often see them in the same relationships. We think that, again, that they intensify the frequency of the violence. They tend to increase the level of the violence. And when a perpetrator is receiving services, intervention, treatment for battering problems, that those issues must all be treated separately. If you solve the domestic violence problem, you do not solve the substance abuse problem, and vice versa.
Is the presumption that a low-income person might feel like they have fewer options? They might have fewer avenues toward getting out of the relationship? And what's your message to those people who might be watching, or someone who knows someone in that situation? What are the avenues for someone who doesn't have a lot of money and might need to get out of a relationship because there's violence taking place?
That's the wonderful thing about shelters. Those services are voluntary, they're confidential, and they are free of charge. So if a victim would just let someone know, I hope we use this. Print the Safe Line number in a few minutes.
We will. Next segment.
Okay, good. So that they can reach out to a statewide toll-free number. Tell someone that this is going on in your life. Give someone the opportunity to help you. Our advocates know how to work with the housing system. We're beginning to develop an economic empowerment system through the Coalition for Victims of Domestic Violence. We have a fund called the Dolores Fund that can help them with first and last month's rent. We can help them buy medications. There are resources available, but because of the voluntary nature of the services, the individual must come to us being an advocacy program, talk to law enforcement, talk to your doctor. Someone will know how to put you in touch with a victim service program.
Marsha Smith was the Oklahoma Coalition Against Domestic Violence. We'll be right back with more of The Verdict after this.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
Shining is taking responsibility. At Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Oklahoma, we know managing your health care can be overwhelming, and it's our job to help you meet the challenge. By guiding, supporting, and showing the way, we encourage you to gain control. Because we believe the best tool we can give you is the confidence to take charge. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Oklahoma, shining through.
Okiwani is an Indian name for a place where children play. When we obtained the camp, we found a lot of oil debris left in the woods. We saw a commercial about how the oil and natural gas industry cleans up old oil well sites. We called the OERB, and they agreed to remove tons of concrete and steel. It didn't cost us a thing. Thousands of children have left their footprints on this land. Thanks to the oil and gas industry, they will for a long time to come.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
Oh, hi. I know you guys said I'd save with Cox Digital Telephone. Well, my bill came and... Could this be right?
You may be surprised how much you save with Cox Digital Telephone. That's why over 1.5 million people have switched.
So this really is a total. Lovely. Because I think I found a good use for the savings.
With Cox, there's no waiting for the other shoe to drop. The only surprise is there's no surprise at all.
There's a whole new world online, but it's not always safe for kids. Never give your name, phone, address, or password to anyone you met online, and always keep your personal information private. It's the safe way for kids. Right, gang?
Right. Be safe online.
Thanks to Lauren Nelson and Cox, we're working to keep Oklahoma kids safer online. For your free guide, log on now. And if you feel your child has been placed in danger by someone online, notify law enforcement today.
We're back on The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. We're visiting with Marsha Smith. She's with the Oklahoma Coalition Against Domestic Violence. Kent, where to now?
Marsha, would you give our viewers your definition of domestic violence and what kind of tactics that perpetrators use to inflict domestic violence?
Sure. Domestic violence is a pattern of coercive behavior that a person uses against the intimate partner in the relationship. It can be psychological, it can be financial, it can be physical. Unfortunately, most tactics are not against the law that perpetrators use. It is pervasive, it's methodical, it's not a one-time violent fight between two partners in a relationship. It is a pattern of behavior with the intention of exerting power and control over the other person, of making that other person do or be whatever the perpetrator wants that person to be.
I'm glad you brought up the laws, because I was going to ask you, are Oklahoma's laws in line with the other states around the country as far as what would be a case of domestic violence and what is not? Are you satisfied with the laws currently in place?
We actually have pretty good statutes in the state of Oklahoma. Our legislature has done a good job. Sometimes we have a little trouble with enforcement, with holding perpetrators accountable, but our statutes as a whole are good. We have a very good protective order statute in Oklahoma. We have good definitions of domestic violence.
If a case of domestic violence is reported, what state agency would spring into action, you would hope?
Well, the criminal justice system. If the case is reported, if the first person that the victim makes contact with would be a law enforcement officer, then that law enforcement officer, there are certain procedures. They have a safe line card that they must give that victim that has the victim's rights. It has the safe line number on it. Most likely will have the phone number of the local domestic violence program. Perhaps that person comes to the shelter the first time. It all depends on where that individual enters the system for the very first time.
Well, Department of Human Services is involved in child abuse. Mm-hmm. They would jump in immediately mm-hmm. and take the child out of the home. Does DHS have anything to do with the domestic violence complaint?
No. That again, because we're looking at adults, unless a child is involved, yeah. DHS would not mm-hmm. become involved in that case.
Tell me more about the network of programs that mm-hmm. you have. You said there's 27 around the state. Mm-hmm. I assume that there's some geographic headquarters mm-hmm. and they have geographic areas that they're responsible for?
That's right. We call it the funding formula in Oklahoma, and the state is divided into areas. And a shelter or a crisis center would be responsible for a particular area. There's a shelter in Muskogee, so there would be 4 or 5 counties that the Muskogee program is responsible for. We have programs from Miami to Idabel, from Altus to Guyman. We actually have a shelter in Guyman, Oklahoma. They are each individually governed and managed. Domestic violence work is a grassroots activity. It stems from within the community. The community finds the need. The community raises the resources to actually begin the program. Boards of directors for local governance are a requirement by the standards for certification for programs. So each one is autonomous, managing themselves under the guidance of the standards and criteria of the Office of the Attorney General.
And you deal straight with the Office of Attorney General?
The programs do, yes, mm-hmm. sir. Go ahead.
I was going to say, what can we do if someone's watching this program and wants to help and knows a person that they feel like might be a victim? What's the first thing you would recommend they do?
Say to that person that I am concerned for your safety. I'm concerned for the safety of your kids. I'm here for you. We can't determine what that victim needs. That victim's the only one that can know that. Perhaps the victim is afraid to leave, and sometimes that's hard for us to understand, but we know that the most dangerous time for a victim is at that time of separation or after separation has occurred. We've had 64 domestic violence incidents in Oklahoma that we can find looking at newspaper accounts. The OSBI report won't be out for a while. 22 of those were intimate partners. That was one intimate partner killing another intimate partner.
Well, those are deaths you're talking about.
Yes, sir. Those were deaths. 22 intimate partner homicides. In addition to that, at least 6 children of the victim in the domestic violence relationship were killed.
Is that this year?
Yes, sir.
I mean, in 2006?
Yes, sir. So it's really important to understand where the victim is coming from, where the victim is, what that victim's needs are, and work with that victim to be safe. Learn a little bit about how to make a safety plan. Learn what the safe line number is. Help her find resources to call. Maybe she has to stay where she is for a while to get her papers in order. We have to think that when we say to a victim, you need to get out of this relationship, it's dangerous. But what about financial concerns? She's probably going to have children. About a third of our children a third of our clients in our shelters are children. So we have to think about housing. Mm-hmm. There are so many things other than just the violence. Sometimes when we look at a victim of domestic violence, we see a victim of violence. Mm-hmm. And perhaps in her life, she sees herself as a mother without resources to care for her children. And perhaps that's the most urgent thing in her situation. So we have to respond to her where she is, what her needs are. But know how to contact a shelter, know the safe line, be able to respond.
Let's go ahead and put that number up on the screen now while you're talking about it.
What is your estimate about what, on an average, the daily population is in your shelters? How many people are in there statewide in Oklahoma on a given day?
Oh, that is really hard. We have about 600 beds, so I would imagine probably 400 individuals.
And let's talk a little bit about the children. One thing that might keep a mother or father, whoever the victim is, from leaving is, well, I don't want to take my child out of school, but if I leave my child in school, the perpetrator knows where the child is and can come get the child or pick up the child, particularly in retaliation. Mm-hmm. What do you do about schooling a child that is with a domestically abused mother, for instance?
That's the wonderful thing about the victim service providers is they have advocates for mom, they have advocates for children. The kids don't miss school. They may have to go to a new school, but they will go with their school supplies. The advocate will have those relationships already built within the community so that the child can immediately get into school.
Are there services for people who are perpetrators of this crime?
We do have, we call them batterers intervention programs in the state of Oklahoma. Sometimes individuals are court ordered to go to those treatment programs, but they also can be voluntary. An individual can realize that I have this problem, that I tend to be too violent in my home, could call, again, the Safe Line number, the Office of the Attorney General, go to the Coalition's website, and those lists of batterers intervention programs are available.
Is the problem getting better in Oklahoma or worse?
It feels like it's getting worse. There was a recent national report that says that across the nation that domestic violence is actually decreasing. From 1993 to 2004, that there was a decrease. In Oklahoma, the OSBI Uniform Crime Report says for that same time frame that actually the incidence of domestic violence increased by 31.8%.
Not a good trend. Marsha, appreciate you coming on The Verdict. We'll give the number and your contact information again in the next segment, but thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much.
Kent and I'll have a final word when we return. Very great.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. a place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
Hi, honey. You've got to check this out.
What? What are we listening to?
I had digital phone service installed today.
It sounds just like before.
I know, but it's going to save us a ton of money.
With Cox Digital Telephone, you'll save big every month. Keep your same phone number and get your favorite calling features. Just pay less.
That does sound good.
You should hear the upstairs phone.
There's a whole new world online, but it's not always safe for kids. Never agree to meet anyone you only know online, because they might not be who they say they are. And if you must meet them, take a parent along. It's the safe way for kids. Right, gang?
Right. Be safe online.
Thanks to Lauren Nelson and Cox, we're working to keep Oklahoma kids safer online. For your free guide, log on now. And if you feel your child has been placed in danger by someone online, notify law enforcement today.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Let's take a look at the contact information for the Oklahoma Center Against Domestic Violence. And there you see their website information. I'll give you the phone number verbally, 1-800-522-SAFE. Difficult problem rising in Oklahoma. Marsha Smith and others are trying to do something about it. Let's wish them luck. We've got some work to do in this area. It's a good show, though. Indeed. We thank Marsha, and we'll be back next week with another show on The Verdict.
The preceding program was produced by the Production Services Group at Cox Communications, exclusively for the Cox Channel.